Hey folks, welcome back. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania. Pay no attention. My guest is trying to get a better image there for you all. But welcome back. Let's get to it. We're going to talk today about bringing pets to America. And this is a broadcast specifically for those interested in the South African refugee program relocating to the States. My guest is Morgan, who is someone that's put together a non-governmental organization that's focused on helping South African refugees get their pets over to America. Morgan, did I describe what you're doing correctly there?
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do with Operation Pet Lyft, is bring the animals from South Africa safely to the United States.
Now, there's a lot involved in that, so Morgan and I will talk more about that in just a moment, but I want to relate very quickly my personal experience with bringing pets. When I lived in Tunisia over 2 decades ago, gosh, 2.5 decades ago when I left there, I came back after 9/11 and I had adopted a cat off the street, Prince, who had a lot of challenges in his life, and he came back here. I managed to bring him back here. Prince, he was an interesting cat. By the way, I'm allergic to cats, so you can tell that obviously I must have cared about him, that I brought him all the way back to America. But Prince and I got on a cruise ship from Tunis and went over to Marseille. And then from Marseille, got in my car and went to Switzerland, where I visited my ancestors' origin from Switzerland. And unfortunately, as I drove down the French highway, Prince was pretty darn noisy. He was squawking because he didn't like something. And I finally realized what the problem was. He couldn't see, and he was moving. He didn't like it. So I put him on the top of a suitcase in the back seat, and he chilled the rest of the trip. Went to Germany, did a little touring, and then flew to the States. He was already chipped. He already had all of his identification, all his shots, because got that all taken care of. Flew him into the States on the same plane that I was on for, I think it was $75 or $100 on a commercial flight. And that was it. The only problem is that they had promised me that that the pets go into quarantine and to veterinary when they arrive. There's a veterinary reception station there, and then you have to go collect them. That's not what happened. Prince was put out with my luggage, and we came in after 9/11, so there were like 15 planes that came in and 5,000 people trying to get through immigration, and they fired all the immigration guys who had felony records because they finally checked them after 9/11. So it took me almost 2.5 hours to get through immigration, and by the time I got through, I hear this, "Arr, arr!" Poor cat had been screaming for 2.5 hours because his carrier was not placed in a veterinary area. It was put with our baggage, all the baggage from the plane. So I dug the bags out and got Prince out. He didn't suffocate. And that was a pretty harrowing experience for Prince. But his next trip was a lot easier. And that's when I moved to Botswana. And I had to pay $5,800 to take Prince and my other cat, which was Tara, from the U.S. to Botswana. And the reason for that cost was South Africa and their veterinary requirements. It jacked up the price. And so $5,800 to get those two to Botswana. And then they got there to Botswana, okay? And then when I left, I sent them on their own. So I had experience of having a pet travel with me and a pet travel without me. So we're going to talk about that as well today. So when I left Botswana, I discovered that I could drive them across the border into South Africa, take them over to Pretoria East, drop them off there at a kennel, and they facilitate everything and then got them to the States. But still, that cost me $2,800. And tragically, while in the States awaiting for some lodging, trying to find a place to live, Prince died while in the kennel. I think they gave him dry cat food. They weren't supposed to because he'd been castrated, and so he wasn't supposed to have dry cat food. But whatever the case is, I lost Prince after paying basically $1,400 getting back to the States. So that's my experience with shipping pets to and from Europe and Africa, Morgan. So let's talk a little about this. There are a lot of requirements to bring pets here. For instance, birds in quarantine, but dogs and cats. So let's go through some things. Do they have to be chipped?
Yes. First, I wanted to say I'm really sorry you lost your cat in the kennel. That's sad.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, but Prince was a tough one. He went through, I think, 13 of his 9 lives. He hung on. He went through a lot of grief, but he was a good cat. And I will say this: he was a greedy little thing too, because I don't know, you're from out west, but here on the East Coast and Chesapeake Bay area, we get steamed crabs, and they're very expensive. A nice treat.
Right.
And every time I had steamed crabs, I had basically a beggar there. Prince was right at my foot, looking up at me, no matter what kind of day he was having, looking for steamed crab. He could eat his weight in steamed crab. Tara would only eat shrimp. She turned her nose up at crab, which I'm happy with. Shrimp's a lot cheaper. But anyway, yeah. But thank you for your thoughts. He was a wonderful addition to my life, even though I had to sneeze and wash my hands all the time. But yeah, so you've got to, dogs and cats have to be chipped. Is that correct?
Yes, cats and dogs have to be chipped, and it has to be a 15-digit chip. So it is a specific requirement. There are some chips in South Africa that don't meet that guideline, according to the CDC, when I've talked to them. My people in South Africa, who are doing a wonderful job, went ahead and they made sure that all of the new chips do meet that criteria. But I am going to have somebody bring a scanner just so that I know that they have the 15 digits.
That's a good idea. No, it's so for people that don't know, it's not a common thing. I don't think in South Africa, but we have microchips that go in. It doesn't harm the pets, but it's for quick identification. So you can determine who they are and the provenance of where they're coming from and things like that. So the next thing I guess is, one thing is I took a lot of grief on my channel, Morgan, because someone came in my chat and misstated or lied. I think they misstated. They said that, well, it only costs $200 to send your pets to the States. That's utter nonsense. What we found out in discussion with you, and I think Marco is the other person I spoke to, you guys putting this thing together. Marco, yes. I think, clarified and said, no, that's $200 for the titer test. That was one test. So, so let's talk about some of the different tests or vaccinations that pets have to have, dogs and cats. Can you, by the way, Morgan, you're an Army logistician, so you're a veteran as well, correct?
Yes, yeah. I was 11 years National Guard, Army Supply Corps, so 88 Alpha Transportation, and then an S4 at the battalion level.
Okay, so a logistician, and hence and a pet lover, obviously. She's got about 8,000 dogs at her house, in case you want to give her a hard time. But she's got a lot of dogs there. She showed me when we chatted the other day. But she's a pet lover. She's concerned about the welfare of pets, and she's an Army logistician by trade. And so she's trying to bring her experience together to help people facilitate, because really this is logistics. It's moving something from one place to another. It's a love part of your family. Okay, so what are some of the tests that are necessary to get dogs and cats into the U.S.?
Okay, so anybody who wants to export, what they're going to need to do is they're going to need, if it's a dog, they have to have the 5-in-1. Distemper is large here, so is, but then there's 5 different vaccinations in that 5-in-1. It covers about everything that they'd run into in the United States and South Africa. They'll need to have a rabies shot. It has to be done at least 30 days before you do the rabies titer. And then you have to have the microchip. Cats are similar in that regard, but they need a 3-in-1. And then the kennel staff also requested yesterday, well, actually it was Friday, that we go ahead, because they do have to clear customs, like you said, and that does take 48 hours at the kennel that we've made reservations in, and they'll need to have the kennel cough shot, the Lisataria.
What's that? The so kennel. What's the kennel cough? Is that like a colloquial name for some disease?
Yeah, it is the name that they use most commonly in the United States for Bordetella, which is a specific upper respiratory virus.
And it's something, I'm assuming, because of the nickname, it tends to be picked up in kennels from pets that aren't vaccinated. Yes,
it's just like the flu in humans.
Okay, got it. That helps. Okay, so dogs need a 5-in-1, which takes care of most of these major diseases. Cats are going to need a 3-in-1. Both need to be chipped, okay? And then this other shy topic. And a key thing for people now, if you're looking to come over as a refugee, you shouldn't be sitting on this. Go get the rabies shot taken care of, because you have to have a 30-day window afterwards. Otherwise, the titer test is invalid, correct?
Yes, because it won't be to the 0.5 or 0.7 required by the CDC of antibodies for rabies. Unfortunately, South Africa is on every warning list there is for the CDC and the USDA APHIS, and they're marked in the top 10 for rabies. So that's why you have to have the titer.
There you go. So now the titer is a separate test, and that's now what you guys do. We're not going to talk a lot about your organization here. We'll talk a little bit about it. But what you're doing is you're working to negotiate rates on, I assume, on a bulk basis to get the price down. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you got the price of the titer test reduced through some suppliers, correct?
I did. IDEX has given us a $100 rate with a $20 discount. And then I have also, because once you hit U.S. airspace, the animals have to be in a specific air classified carrier now. That's just to keep them from suffocating. And so I've bulk priced that as well into that $200 that we said would be the minimum.
Okay, so that's for the carrier and the titer test that you negotiated is $200 for that. Now that's interesting, and thank you for that, because cats are obviously smaller, and I don't know if they need the same size carrier as certain dogs, but when I had before, there's obviously, for those who have pets, there's different categories of these kennels and how you can use them, but obviously the rules were much less stringent, I would say, when I shipped my cats, because I didn't have to buy a special carrier. The ones I bought in the U.S., they were already qualified, so I didn't have to go them away. But South Africans are going to have to have a specific carrier in order to bring their pets over.
Yes, because once we hit U.S. airspace, they have to be, I think it's like the acronym is ASA, Air Safety Qualified Container.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. That does make sense. So these rates you're negotiating are with providers in South Africa to give these discounted rates, correct?
IDEX is actually an American-owned company, and we will overnight ship to Germany the blood samples for the titers because they're a CDC-approved lab. So the kennel carrier is actually American, and my airliner is American, and they're going to go ahead and ship our kennels over there ahead of time for the people, and we'll mass store them.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So how do the kennels get there? Because, I mean, I go to a pet shop in South Africa, I'm not necessarily going to find the right kennel. These are going to be sent from the U.S. to South Africa. Okay. All right, so that's the first thing. But back to the titer test. So are samples going to be collected in South Africa and then flown by air to Germany for testing, or am I getting it wrong? Or?
Yeah, that's what they have to do. It's a blood serology. I'm sorry, my Great Dane is giving me a heck of a time. He pushed the door open. So what they have to do is they'll draw the blood. They'll put it in like air, like tight container for serology. So it'll be in a tube. It'll be cooled, and then they'll overnight ship it to Germany, and then they will do the serology there because it requires specific equipment, and the lab in South Africa is very backed up, and I want to be able to do the labs within 1 month. And so that's why we chose to go with a provider for overnights to Germany.
Okay, so that raises another question. As I said, I've traveled with my pets and without my pets. It's gone both ways and had to collect them. So how is this anticipated to work? Are we anticipating that some, most, all, none of the people come over as refugees will be arriving with their pets, or they'll be sent afterwards? Do we have a feel for that with what you're trying to put together?
With what we're trying to put together, they will arrive at the same time.
Oh, well, that's
through the air carrier.
That's brilliant. But of course, that presumes that some. Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
it's going to, like, I'm chartering them through the same company, both the passenger plane and the cargo plane. South Africa has really interesting guidelines about how the animals can be shipped and stored at this point in time. And so they have to be in an actual conditioned heated cargo bay. And a lot of the aircraft don't have that. And that's why I went the way I did. I just want to be legal.
Yeah, no, of course. So they're not going to be like if you go on a United or a Delta flight, the animals won't be stored on that plane. They'll be in a separate plane. Am I misunderstanding?
No, they will be on a separate plane.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow. I mean, you must have a lot of deep pocket friends like Elon Musk to help you out, because that's going to be pretty expensive, is it not? Because I mean, it sounds like a charter flight.
It is a charter flight, but the people gave us a discounted price.
Okay.
So I'm working. That's one of those things where it's kind of like right at this point in time, I've only been doing this for 3 weeks, and I'm still working out the logistics. When I have a solid answer with all the logistics, I'd love to come back on and just give the solid answers.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good idea. We should follow up with this at some point, because where I was going to go, and I interrupted you, I apologize for that, but right now, let's say someone gets a call, because there are people in the hopper who've done interviews, the vetting has been done on them, they may be finished. They get a call saying, okay, today is Sunday, Thursday, we need you to fly. Are you able to come up here? But it's obviously too soon to have arranged all this through your organization, because you're still building the framework for it. So those folks are most likely, unless they have the money to pay for their pets to come over right then, they've done all this homework on their own, which is pretty complicated based on our conversation. It's the odds are their pets aren't going to come with them right away. They're going to have to leave them behind. And now, if that happens to folks, will they be able to reach out to your organization at some point in the future and try to get them on that flight over here?
I've already had a couple of refugees that came to America who are having difficulties with the state vet and transportation reach out to us, and we've made spots available on the plane for them.
All right, well, that's brilliant. Is this a one-off, or are you something you hope to do more than once? Because you said on the plane. I don't want to assume that it's just one time, unless it is one time.
Um, my intention is to use this as a concept of operation. I have multiple animals coming that have to clear through multiple agencies at multiple facilities, and so I just want to make sure I can pull this off and have a concept of what I need to improve, and then I will attempt it more than once. But this is my first attempt.
Okay.
So.
All right, so Morgan, these refugees are all over the country, people in multiple states. So if the animals aren't arriving with them, if they, for some of these people, they arrive after the fact, they're going, well, we just switched. What happened there? My Zoom just switched around. I went on the left side, now I'm not the right side. Let me try to do that, go back. I've never seen that before. But now I'm all thrown off balance here because you're on the right, I'm on the left. But anyway, but seriously, so for those folks who won't be with their pets, obviously, what happens there? I mean, they're obviously going to have to be put on another flight unless they happen to land. Say somebody gets settled in Georgia and they land in Atlanta with Delta, then obviously, and the contract flight lands there, then obviously they can drive to Atlanta to pick up their pet. But if they're in Montana or California, they're going to have to be flown to them. It's a pretty long drive. I mean, is there a plan for that, or is that part of the whole process, or no?
We're working on the logistics of that. I haven't pinned it down. I have about 3 different plans operating on that logistics of internal movement and housing. And as soon as I have the definite answers, it's just one of those things where I have to meet with health and human services, some different fostering and pet agencies, where we have the meeting and then we get it in writing. And I don't want to say anything until I have it in writing because I don't want to disappoint people.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's we're trying to frame this so people understand. I mean, there's nothing stopping someone right now from coordinating all this on their own. If they have the resources to pay a pet carrier to bring their pet over, they can do that on their own. I mean, that's what I did. It worked, but it is pricey, is it not, Morgan? It costs a lot of money to do it this way.
So right now, a lot of people who have went without us to do the titer paid over $400 US. And then with the internal fees for clearing customs and being on the plane, it's usually somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000, which is why I'm trying to help them. I feel like they're being price gouged because they know that they're desperate, and I don't like that. It sets wrong with me as a person from Wyoming. I think you ought to be fair and outright with your dealings.
Well, I hear you, but I don't think it's because of refugees. I think it's just because people love their pets and they can gouge you. I mean, I wasn't exactly desperate to take my pets to Botswana, and I still paid $6,000 to take 2 cats that didn't even weigh 4 kgs. So, I mean, it's what airlines can get away with, and they've gotten away with it for a very long time. Not just the airlines, though. It's customs, immigration, vet, all that. That's a whole look, folks. This is not a simple process to get people from place to place, or get pets from place to place, and that's why Morgan has stepped in here and she's putting a lot of time and effort into this. And I believe this is all volunteer on your part. There's no payback for this other than helping people be reunited with their pets.
Yes, I'm just volunteering because I love animals. I just want to give these people an opportunity to have their pets here safe. I don't want to see anybody have to put their animal down or leave it in a place that's really dangerous. Yeah, and I've read what they do to animals there, so I'm kind of concerned for their pets.
No, I'm 100% with you, but we've got some odd questions coming in about unusual pets, but I'll get to that in a second. So someone asked a question about pets being sterilized. To my knowledge, pets don't have to be sterilized come to the States.
No, they don't. They just need to have their inoculations and the chips, and I'm not going to block you from the flight if your animal isn't sterilized. I already have talked to the CDC about that.
If you're not sterilized, I may intervene and get you stopped from coming. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Not you, Morgan, the refugees. No, pets don't have to be sterilized. We just want to make sure people understand that. There's a lot of rumors out there. We want to dispel that. So now let's get to some of the odder things. Okay, so some people have birds, like my aunt's got a budgie and, and then I guess she's got a parrot and all this other stuff. South Africans love their budgies too. So birds are a little bit different story because of avian influenza, bird flu, all this stuff. So if I'm not mistaken,
avian influenza and Newcastle disease is the 2 you have to be worried about clearing quarantine.
If I'm not mistaken, they've got to be in quarantine, right? Your dogs and cats aren't quarantined, but your birds have to be quarantined when they arrive, correct?
Yeah, 30 days.
Which is going to drive up your costs because you're paying for a kennel for 30 days.
Yeah. And they have to do blood serologies. I have all of that data right now, and I'm working to correlate it. It's one of those things, too, where it's been 3 weeks, and I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much I can drive down the costs and what I can do for fundraising.
Okay.
So
Now, the titer test, is that for cats and dogs or just dogs?
It's for cats and dogs.
That's what I thought.
And
Yeah,
probably horses as well.
because what you're trying to prove is they don't have rabies, and so you have to have that level of protection. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now we get on to some weird ones here. I'm sorry, folks. If you've got primates as your pets, that's weird in my book, but that's your privilege. It's your prerogative. Can people bring their primates over? And I'm not talking about their children. I'm talking Homo sapien primates. I'm talking about chimpanzees or monkeys or whatever, whatever it is, bonobos or whatever. Is that something people can bring over as well?
It's legal. I haven't had anybody request a primate or an orate. So like if they want to do that, I would need them to request that information, and then I would have to take it through a wildlife vet, which I have contacts for, and I would be able to see what I could do to facilitate that. But I haven't had anybody request that yet. It's mostly been horses, birds, dogs, and cats so far.
Gotcha. Now, Ulandi, Alan's asking a question here, and I'll clarify it, and then you can jump in here too. But she says, are cats allowed to stay in flats? Well, first off, that's very painful and difficult because we don't have flats in America. Flats are not high heels. They're not pumps for women. Those are flats. We have apartments in America. So let's be clear. You're going to have to learn American if you're coming over here. So we have apartments. It depends on where you're at. Some apartment complexes do not allow pets. Others do allow pets, but it's not unusual to be allowed pets. But oftentimes you have to have a larger deposit if you have pets. So it's all dependent wherever you are in the country. So, I mean, that's been your experience, hasn't it, Morgan?
Yeah, and we have some ways to help them a little bit with the cost of that, like qualifying it as an ESA. Okay. We have some doctors willing to help us with that. So, like, I guess
now that's an emotional support animal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, not everybody knows that term.
So cats and dogs would both qualify as a ESA, but like your bonobo and probably a bird or a horse wouldn't.
I'm guessing my python wouldn't be an emotional support animal.
Probably not.
Please don't bring pythons to Florida. They're eating everything in the Okanoki in the Delta there. So let's talk a little bit about pets over here, folks, very quickly, and then I'll get Morgan to jump in here where she thinks I got something wrong or she wants to add to it here. So the thing about this is that when you arrive here, and we've learned this from Thea, but I also knew this already. Thea confirmed this. Thea is one of the first refugees to come over here. They are taking the refugees arrive and putting them in temporary accommodation, not because they can't find permanent accommodation, not because there's no houses. This isn't the Cape Flats where there's a backlog of houses, but because they've discovered that a lot of refugees coming from places like Somalia and Chad and, Myanmar will say anything to get out of the refugee camp to come to America. I'll go anywhere. Put me anywhere. Of course, not knowing that it's minus 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit in Minnesota in the wintertime. And they go places, and also not telling the U.S. immigration officials that they have cousins in Memphis, Tennessee. So once they get here, they quickly relocate and lose all their services because they're no longer in a place where they had an agent helping them. And it created all kinds of problems for refugees coming over here. So what now Homeland Security does is when you arrive, they put you in temporary housing for like about 2 weeks, up to 10 days, 2 weeks, just for you to get here, catch your breath, and then the agents talk to you and find out if that's really where you're supposed to be at. Oh, no. I've got family in Chantilly, Virginia. Okay, then why'd you tell us you would go to, Colorado? Now we got to move you. Anyway, so people are all going to temporary places. Your temporary accommodation may not allow pets. So you have to be prepared for that. And Morgan, maybe you can address this. But if your pets come, even if your pets come with you and say they put you in a place where you can't have pets, either the agent or a volunteer is going to have to be willing to take your pets off your hand when they arrive for a few days until you get in your permanent quarters, or you're going to have to pay for a kennel somewhere. I mean, have I missed anything there, Morgan?
No, we're working on our side to get enough fosters and kennels, and then also, like I said, with the doctors and stuff to make sure that we can try to advocate for them to be placed in a location or hotel where they are allowed pets. So we're trying to work that out. I mean, like, this has a lot of moving parts and literally like about 7 federal agencies you have to work with. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff where once I have the final I'll come back and talk to you about it.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. Very quickly, Maze is saying that he's headed to Wyoming. No, you're not headed to Wyoming. Wyoming has a population cap to ensure it's the lowest populated state in America, and it's currently at that cap. I did get my application in time, so I will be relocating to Wyoming, but none of you refugees can come there. Stay away. Wyoming is not for you. These are not the droids you're looking for. Wyoming is full of evil people, horrible weather, and terrible winters. You don't want Wyoming. It's a lousy place. Poor Morgan suffers immensely there in Wyoming. It's the worst place in America. You want to go to California.
Forgot the animals. The bears, the mountain lions.
That's right. Cougars, pumas, catamounts. They're everywhere, man. Be careful. You know, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. You don't want Wyoming. But seriously, let's get back to it. So I've been discouraging people from going to Wyoming for a long time because that's for me, not for you. Anyway, but seriously, so it brings up the question: you have a registered non-government organization or a not-for-profit, they would call it in South Africa. So you have an NGO that's non-profit based. You've registered that, I presume, in
Yes.
Wyoming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
it's registered at the State Department here.
oh, okay. With the State Department of Wyoming.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
we also registered with the IRS here.
With the
So,
IRS.
yep.
Okay, so you've got your taxpayer identification number, whatever they give you for that. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've already been in contact with the Department of State and I believe also Homeland Security, or if I got that right or wrong?
We've talked to the Department of State and CDC, SDA, APHIS, and Health and Human Services. I haven't really talked to the Department of Homeland Security yet. If I find a need, I will reach out. My congresswoman is helping me immensely. So whenever I need something, I just send up like a request through her chief of staff, and she gets back to me with the information I need.
All right. Okay. Some of the ladies are saying they qualify as cougars. That's the wrong kind of cougar, ladies. I'm sorry. That doesn't count. It doesn't count. That's the wrong kind of cougar. All right. Well, look, it sounds like you're doing some pretty amazing things to try to help people. But again, we just got to be clear to folks. The work thing you're working on is a work in progress. You're still progressing
Yes.
on it. But in the meantime, as somebody gets orders, as we say in the Army, get orders to move, you're going to have to organize this on your own in the short term if you want your pets to come over with you, because they're still working on this. Is that correct?
Yes, like I said, we're more than willing to facilitate helping them get their pet over at a later date and time if they have family that will watch it. But we have a time window we have to operate in with the facilities that we're working with. They have to have a certain amount of time to prepare for the amount of animals that we're going to bring through and be able to clear them correctly through customs.
Now, Morgan, look, I know you're a logistician. You've worked in logistics, and that in itself is quite complicated. Just ask, UPS or FedEx or DHL. They know how complicated moving things are around the globe by air, sea, and by ground transport. And of course, serving the Army and the Guard, you know exactly. I mean, that's the things. I mean, what amazed me was when I went to the Gulf War, all the tonnage of stuff that arrived at Dhahran at the port. It's just absolutely amazing. The things came off the planes and how quickly we moved all those people. It's just amazing. But this is an incredibly complex process what you're trying to accomplish here. Do you have help? Do you have people on the South Africa side that are helping, or anyone else in the U.S.? Or I hope you're not doing this all by yourself. I mean, we don't want to shorten your lifespan here.
No, I'm definitely not working by myself. I wouldn't have even attempted this if I hadn't found people on the ground that wanted to help me. I would like to thank my team on the ground that's working both on the Facebook and WhatsApp with us, and then as well my people who are doing, research for me, because I have to have specific weights and sizes on these animals to get the appropriate price tag on the flight, and also make it to where the flight people are able to load the plane appropriately. So I appreciate all the work my people in South Africa are doing for sure. And then, my financing people, like my treasurer and some of the people here on the American side that are helping with fundraising, I appreciate them too.
So, wow, that sounds like quite a few people are involved here to really make this thing come off. It's quite an undertaking here. And, you mentioned the weight of the pets. Someone that flies a lot, I know that weight bears on flight planning. They have to have a feel for the weight. So that makes sense, especially if you're doing a charter flight and all these pets, you're going to want to feel for it. But back to the point where they gouge people. I really felt I was gouged at $5,800 because my cats weigh nothing. That had virtually no impact on that flight whatsoever. But obviously for this, in order for load planning and for fuel consumption and that sort of thing, they're going to have to know the weight. So people need to go weigh their pets, correct?
Yeah, they need to weigh their pets, and then they have to measure them from nose to tail when they turn that information in, so that we make sure we have the appropriate sized kennel and that it meets the airline guidelines for safety for their pets' travel. Unfortunately, we have to have the dimensions on the animal and the weight. Yeah.
Okay, dimensions, not including the tail, I imagine.
Yeah. It's just from the nose to the butt. They usually can curl that up in the kennel.
Okay, just double checking there, because my cat would have been a lot longer if he counted his tail. He had a big bushy tail, but yeah. So compared to the other one had just like a regular tail. But anyway, so okay, I think we've covered much of the ground here. Now your organization is raising money through private donors, and also I believe you may have gotten some grants or a grant or something.
We filled out paperwork for grants, so we're waiting to see if we can get some federal grants. And then we've started private donations. We're talking to some different people. We've talking to different animal rescue agencies about both the paperwork, so that we have the appropriate legal paperwork and documentation, as well as maybe some funding and guidance as to how they do fundraising. And then I'm looking at a third option, but I don't really want to get into that too much until I've finished discussing it with the government. So I have like about 3 different plans that I'm planning out, and I'm just going to see which one comes to fruition. That's like the military part of me. I got to have a couple backup plans.
Yeah, exactly. You got to plan for branches and sequels. You don't always control all the events taking place. You got to prepare. If you run a roadblock here, how do you overcome that? So it sounds like you've thought that through. But then most military folks have their act together when it comes to this. Not all, but most. So Morgan, let me ask this question, a personal question. I mean, how did you even know about this? I mean, you're out there in Wyoming, which is in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and that's why I love it. It says like 12 people live in Wyoming, in a state the size of South Africa. It's how in the world do you even know about this refugee thing? And then how quickly did you say, wait a second, I need to do something here?
I was actually watching that first interview you did with the refugee, the blonde lady. I'm not real good with names.
Thea van Staden, Straden.
And she said that she wanted to get a job very quickly so that she could bring her pet over. And that was when I was like, well, I want to help her. So I called around to different volunteer agencies and different rescues to see if I could, find something and then contact you. And as I talked to them, they were like, they said, we don't get involved with international transport because it's too complicated. And I thought to myself, being in the military, making no decision is making a decision. And I was like, I'm just going to jump in, talk to my congresswoman, because like you said, there's 5 of us, so it's easy to get a meeting. And
well, to be fair, there's 4 of you and your congresswoman.
So it's easy for me to wrangle her down. And then I was like, I want to do this. And she was like, well, I'll help you get in contact with everybody you need to clear customs. And she has been amazing. And I have to say, I'm from Wyoming, and we typically bash on the government, but they've actually done a really good job this time helping me. So I appreciate that too.
Well, that's another reason I love Wyoming, because independence, firearms, faith, family flag, and bashing on the government is all things I'm pretty happy with. So, all right. So you happened to catch my interview. I mean, were you on YouTube and it just said for you recommendation, or did somebody mention it to you?
Yeah, that was how it came up. I was insulted. Some person said that I was a Democrat. And my mom's family is Jewish, so I had registered as a Democrat, but I have never voted that way because I was born here. And then I always am in touch with Republican issues, and I think this is more touching to Republicans, like the South African issue. And it just showed up on my feed, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, that's terrible.
No, it is. Yeah, and her pets are still back there.
The killing.
Oh yeah, that too. But I'm saying, yeah, but no, her pets are still. Yeah, no, her pets are still back there in South Africa right now. But the good news for Thea, we'll be talking to her again soon. She's had some really good developments, and things are going very well. She's got a place. She's living in a wonderful location. She's got a car already. Wow, it doesn't even have a driver's license. She's got a car, so she won't be driving it until she gets a driver's license. And things are going well on the job front for her too. So we're going to have her back on sometime soon. But obviously,
I'm glad to hear that.
Obviously wants to raise money to get her pets over as quickly as possible. So, yeah, okay. I just have this is a necessary comment. If you mention that you want to go to Wyoming, you will not be allowed to participate in the refugee program. Just sorry, I had to put that out there.
Well, Chris, we have no refugee office here.
Oh, there you go. Actually, that's true. Yeah. I don't think there's any relocation office in Wyoming. If there was, it would be in Cheyenne. I'm not aware of one. So, yeah.
No, we got rid of it a while back. It was political. Maybe someday we'll talk about that.
That's a whole other cup of tea, a whole different kettle of fish. Speaking of which, I mean, do people bring? I mean, I don't. Do they bring fish into the country as pets? I don't know. I've never heard of that.
I don't know what the guidelines on that would be. I would think you could bring them through the USDA because you can do fungus, plants, and animals through the USDA as long as they aren't a rabies bearer like a dog or a cat. So.
Yeah, and of course, that's a big concern. When I went to Africa the first time, I had to have rabies vaccination. That's an unpleasant vaccination. It comes in 3 shots. It's like this really pink mauve color thing, and it's huge. They inject you with a lot, so it's kind of sore. But there's a global shortage of rabies vaccine for humans, and that's been a problem for a number of years now. So that's one reason why they're so stringent on rabies vaccinations and the titer test for your pets. What's been the biggest challenge for you thus far, Morgan, in doing this? I mean, obviously, there's probably a bunch of things. Is there a big roadblock you've already been able to overcome that has gotten in your way?
Oh, I want to be rude, but when I was dealing with the South African vets to get the sign off to come over here, we were definitely having what I would call a communication issue, and I had to have a couple different people talk to them about that we are allowed to pick our own lab, and that the lab is correct, and that they do have to sign off on the titers regardless of how they feel. It was very interesting.
Well, it's interesting you say it's very interesting, because I have to say is that it sounds to me, without knowing anyone involved and not pointing fingers at anyone, that people are trying to protect their source of revenue. That's probably what played a role here.
I think that you have a large industry over there that's based on this, and I also think they see that the revenue stream may be decreasing quite a bit in the future, and so I have seen that a lot of them are trying to protect their revenue stream. Which, I mean, I understand that, but you also have to look at the fact that everybody that I'm working with is selling everything they have, if they can, and they just want to keep their family intact. And that's why you should have some compassion and help them out with that instead of taking advantage of them. Like, you shouldn't kick people when they're down. That's just messed up.
No, I got you on that. Someone asked a question about rodents. They may not like my description of that, but a hamster is a rodent. Hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, they can come over, can't they?
And rabbits.
Oh, and rabbits. Yeah, rabbits.
They do have to have a specific type of rabies shot. You are able to get that in country, and then we are able to do a titer on them and bring them over. And they actually clear through USDA fees.
Okay. So. You keep saying APHIS, and for you and I, APHIS is the Army and Air Force Exchange Service. So what APHIS are you referring to? Do you know that acronym?
So the USDA has a secondary agricultural import, and that portion of it is the APHIS part behind the USDA. Okay. It's the actual customs branch. But like I said, they're pretty cool dudes thus far. I haven't had a problem with them. So
are horses considered pets, or are they livestock? I would think they'd be livestock coming over.
They're considered livestock. So when you bring in a horse, it has to go through the USDA. So horses in South Africa are really interesting. So they have every disease that they don't want to have in South Africa.
Like foot and mouth, maybe?
Well, they also have they have a type of STD for horses.
Equine encephalitis?
Yes. And then they also have horse sickness. And so they have 4 different illnesses they're trying to keep out of this country. So there's only one place where you can bring the horses in and clear them, because they want them to be in an airlocked facility. So that's New York. So you have to go to the ARC. That's an interesting overall learning curve for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So we've covered a lot of different pets that came over here. So you've, as I say, you've run into some challenges here. I think one of the biggest challenges is just figuring out all these different types of pets that people want to bring over here. I mean, wow, it's pretty crazy. Oh, someone just mentioned somebody's foot and mouth, African horse sickness, STDs, leptospirosis, yellow fever.
Yeah.
Good Lord, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, you got all that in South Africa, so it's got to be clear. We don't want our herds being decimated by that. We've got a lot of horses here, particularly wild horses. The Mustangs running wild in the West, the descendants of Spanish horses, amazing. They have to cull them every so often on federal lands. And of course, we have them here on the East Coast, too. We have Assateague and Chincoteague Island off the Chesapeake Bay, where the horses have been there since the Spanish galleon. I think it was crashed there like almost 500 years ago. But yeah, we have horses all over this country. Amazing creatures. Even got a few in Wyoming.
We, I think, have two of the largest herds in the continental United States in the Red Desert. I have some friends over there that I promised them when they get here, I will take them to see the horses. So.
Okay, now look, I'm going to have to intervene here. I don't need you helping people get to Wyoming. This is running contrary to the effort we're doing here, okay? If you want to send them to South Dakota, that's fine. It's nearby. They can look across the border and wave. Stay out of Wyoming.
Okay. We'll keep it nice and people free. We're pretty good at that, I think, actually.
Wouldn't that be something if a bunch of South Africans showed up? And look, I mean, I don't want to give them ideas, but if South Africans showed up in mass in Wyoming, they could actually have their own community, kind of like the Icelanders off an island peninsula in Michigan and the Amish in Pennsylvania and across the country. I mean, it could actually keep their Afrikaans going, but you better accept our laws and mores.
Yeah. Well, we have some Amish here in Wyoming that we don't really bother them, and a Hutterite colony, and we don't really bother them. They live their life, and we, do trade with them, but they speak Dutch and everything there. We're more of a live and let live kind of state. We're friendly enough as long as you don't do anything too weird. So.
Yeah, you save that for California. That's where the nuts and fruits go. So,
or Boulder, Colorado. Those are the two places.
Boulder, Colorado. Yeah, let's not get started on that. And another recent event taking place there. I remember a couple years ago, this shooting took place there at the supermarket. That was pretty sad. All right, so Morgan, let's see. We've talked about the test. We've talked about requirements. We've talked about a bit about cost and such, and also about this being a charter flight and trying to get people to come over with their pets. Given that a lot of people are going to be coming over individually, it sounds like you're not going to be able to have pets come at the same time, because we have flights, a commercial flight, 5 or 10 refugees will come over on that flight, another one that might be 50 or something like that. So it sounds like there will be a lot of times in which people are going to have to wait for their pets, or they have to reunite with their pets once they get here.
Right. And like I said, we're working on different plans. We're trying to work through my congresswoman to get in touch with the State Department with some things that we'd like to work through with them. But you can't really comment on it until you have the paperwork in hand. That's my motto. Paperwork in hand, then I can say whatever I want.
All right, so let's talk about this. I didn't really come here to promote your organization or to diss it. That's not the case. But since we've gotten to the stage, if people want to know more about this, are you at the stage where people can find out more? Do you have a website, or do you have a Facebook page, or do you have a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group? What's some ways people can find out about this, or do you want to hold off on the rush? We don't want 10,000 people coming, or is it okay?
We have both of our Facebook and WhatsApp groups open. I'd have to look at it real quick on my phone as to, I think it's just South African Pets to America.
Okay. Well, you can send that to me, and I could post it. I could post it below the video after the fact too. So but you've got those, right?
Yeah, and then we're working on some account stuff, but I would say sometime Monday afternoon I will have the website up and completed, and then they could access it there, and I will give you the website information sometime tomorrow in the afternoon. And then if they are interested in our program, just because of the logistics, I would ask that, the rabies shot, get the 5-in-1, get the microchip, because you're going to have to do that regardless. And then if you fill out the forms, I'll try to make sure that we try to wrangle up enough money to get everybody over. I just need to have a budget, and I can't have a budget without knowing who wants help.
So, Morgan, my experience with this whole episode, and it's been frustrating because people don't listen, is that you tell people exactly what they need to know and what they need to do, and it goes in one ear and goes right out the other ear, and then they get angry because they misunderstand something. Has someone put together some sort of checklist of you need to do this, you need this, you need this, you need this, and maybe you need it in this particular order? Like, for instance, we talked about getting the rabies test. You have to wait 30 days before that titer will be sufficient. So is there a checklist?
Yes.
Have you guys put one together?
We've been working on that,
Okay.
and I also have some that I have to correlate into that with the USDA or CDC, depending on what kind of pet it is. And then we'll just, once we have their contact information, we'll send that out to them so that they can just go through it, make sure they have everything. I just want to make sure if they fill out everything that they're supposed to that's on that, even if they decide to go with a private courier or with an airline with the animal between their legs because they have like a cat or something, then they have everything they need to get the animals over. I'm more about, I just don't want to see any animals suffer or any people. That's my concern. So.
Yeah, it's we don't want to see pets put down unnecessarily or left abandoned where they starve or they're abused, that sort of thing. Tyra Britz, your question is about people, not pets. This is a pets conversation. I would ask that you save your question for what I'm now doing every week out of the goodness of my heart is a refugee conversation. Every Sunday. Today is the first episode at 8 p.m. South Africa time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. So after my news broadcast will be on. Please save your question for that. We're talking about pets right now. So here's one I need to ask. I think it might have been mentioned in the chat a couple of times, or maybe I misread it. What about breeds that are not allowed? You know, there's a lot of talk about pit bulls, but pit bulls aren't banned in America. Can you bring a pit bull over?
Pit bulls are not banned. There's only I would actually say from what I have seen through the CDC that no animal that's a dog is banned. There will be some guidelines about health and, reactivity. That we'll have to go over with the person if they have a breed that might be a little more aggressive. But there are some places in the United States that if you do have I think they call it a Bora Bora or a Boral, and then maybe a pit bull or a Cane Corso, that we would need to go over some of those things with you personally, because there are some places where it'd be very difficult for you to rent with those breeds. But we're willing to help you get the dog over and then, give you some guidance on that.
Yeah,
I have all of them.
So I mean, that's there are some restrictions on ownership of certain types of dog in certain states. Pit bull is one that does come to mind. There are certain requirements, some outright bans in some communities that they're able to do that. So once you know where you're going to go, you need to quickly look up that state and that locality to make sure that you can actually have that sort of pet there. And that's incumbent on the pet owner. That's your responsibility. You shouldn't expect Morgan and her team to do that. They might have the resources, but they're busy trying to put all this other stuff together, including raising money. This is quite an expensive undertaking and adventure, as I can tell you from personal experience. Spent so over 58, 68, 78, over $8,000, almost $9,000 to move cats after I'd only paid $75, $75 to fly my cat from Frankfurt to DC. What a change it was. But it has a lot to do with South Africa's veterinary requirements. That's why we're dealing with this.
Yeah, they do have quite a few requirements. And, the U.S. also has quite a few requirements, but it's not, I think that they're a little more cost prohibitive, and I don't really understand why. But that, going to South Africa is more expensive than leaving it, really.
Elizabeth Voss is asking which airport would pets arrive at. It's not really germane, Elizabeth. Where are you arriving at? So why does it matter? You don't know where you're arriving, so why would you care where the pets are arriving until you know?
Yeah. I have a pretty good idea of where the pets will arrive, but it's based on what facilities they need to clear quarantine. And so, when they're part of the program, I'm more than willing to, release that. I just want to make sure I maintain some security for the safety of the pets, because the refugee program seems to irritate some people. Not a lot of people.
No, it does. It does irritate plenty of people, Morgan. There's plenty of idiots and morons and racists out there who take exception. The nonsense we see about the refugee program going on every single day. Again, I'm not advocating or encouraging a single person to leave South Africa or stay. That's not my place. I don't think that's Morgan's place either. We're just trying to help those who find themselves in these circumstances with the information, the facts. Because there's a lot of nonsense out there. And I want to be clear for the people that attacked me, shame on you. You came in my group and claimed that it only costs $200 to bring a pet to States. That's factually incorrect. We've proven that, and this conversation with Morgan proves that's the case. Now, maybe there was it might have been misunderstanding from that standpoint, that maybe someone assumed that your organization was putting together finance that was going to pay for everything except maybe that test, and maybe that's where that came from. I don't know. But the bottom line is it doesn't cost $200 to send a cat or a dog to the States, correct?
Especially if you do it on your own. Like, I'm trying to help as much as I can with the cost, but I can't really, at this point in time, comment on what that's going to look like. It will be like sometime around August when I will be able to really say what that's going to look like financially. And I don't want to get people's hopes up or dash their hopes prematurely. I know that August is a long time away, but like, I feel like I prefer to know what actually is happening before I tell somebody, just so that I don't have to change what I'm saying multiple times.
Sure, fair enough. Now, here's a question I didn't raise, but someone's mentioned it over here. A number of people talk about their pets having cancer, or diabetes. Is there anything that prohibits, or anything that will cost extra if you've got a pet that needs special attention during the flight? Because I mean, we're not talking about a 3-hour flight. We're talking about a 14 to 16-hour flight just to get over to the States. Yeah. So is there any special?
Okay, so like what I would say is this. I do have volunteer vets from the state of Wyoming who are willing to come, and they're going to bring some stuff in order that if we had a medical emergency for a pet, that we would be able to treat them on board. That doesn't necessarily mean, because it would be a medical emergency, so like, you don't know what the outcome of that would be. If you have an animal that needs medication, we will have handlers on the plane, and if the animal is willing to take the medication, we'll give it to them. The issue you're going to have is when you get to the quarantine and they have to clear customs, which usually takes anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, and they do stay in a kenneling facility at that time. If they have a medical issue, we have to have every bit of documentation to prove that, or they will hold them longer, and then you'll be liable for the extra quarantine fees as well as the medical assistance. So if you have an animal with those issues, we need to discuss that in depth with you so that we can make sure that there's no surprises later on.
That's a very good point. I'm glad someone asked that question. So again, we've covered this. So a friend of mine who has 4 dogs and 3 from another family member, so 7 that they tried to get a quote for, 200,000 Rand on their own to bring them over. I've had quotes from other people, 120,000 Rand, 60,000 Rand, but I haven't heard one quote for anything that's less than about $2,800, $3,000 US. So 60,000 Rand is about the best. So when you do it on your own, it is pricey. So that's the first question. Papa Yusha is asking the question, which has already been asked and answered several times in this broadcast, but you must have arrived late. And the other question here is somebody says, so it's just $200 for us special pricing because refugees. No, you're not listening. You're not listening. Please take the cotton out of your ears and listen to what I'm about to say. This organization that Morgan has put together with others is trying to do this to help you, and they're negotiating costs down, but there isn't a price set for this yet, or whether they'll actually be able to carry the cost for everyone. And even if they're able to carry the cost for everyone, if there's so many people, it may be beyond their means. So let's not make assumptions that it's going to cost you $200 to send your pets over. I suspect that Morgan will wind up with the best price possible, if there's a price, to help people. But there are no guarantees here. So if you sit around going, oh, I only need 4,000 Rand, I'm good to go. Well, then you may find yourself very bitterly disappointed and your pet's left behind. Do not make that assumption. Morgan and her team are working to help you and try to get costs reduced, and if possible, even get rid of them altogether if enough money comes in to help them out. But there are no guarantees here other than these people working assiduously on your behalf, and they know what they're doing. So, Morgan, did I misstate anything there?
No, I would prefer that, when you might be facing a large expense, it's best to hold on to your money just in case something unexpected occurs. Like I said, I will work my best to make it the lowest price or no price, but that is no guarantee. I've been really lucky so far in my negotiations and pushing things down in price, but I don't know what that associated cost will be at this time. And like I said, I won't know until August for sure. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I have those details, I will be putting them out. But like I said, you just have to make sure that you only have to tell somebody something once so that you don't seem like a crazy person. And this is a very fluid situation at this point in time. And as soon as I have everything tacked down, I will probably go ahead and list a worst and best case scenario so that people know what to expect.
Well, that's not unreasonable, but I just want to get across to people. I would appreciate if people quit telling others that it only costs $200 to send a pet, and also attaching that to you, because you don't even know that yet. So I think that's unfair for people to do that. So that's what I call fake news. And what you're going to do is break a lot of hearts for a lot of people if, in fact, this thing does come in as a bit costly, because it's just really unfair. But even if there is a cost attached to this, Morgan, what you are doing is simplifying the process in many respects for people that have no experience with this, correct?
Yes. Well, and then the other part is there are some, from what I've seen, there are some political actors on that side that want to make coming here difficult. And when coming in a larger group with your pets, I'm offering them some safety, because it will make it a lot more apparent that something is happening. And so, like, what I'm trying to do is just give you some extra safety for your animals as well.
No, that's
so
excellent.
It's just like I said, once the plan's concrete, I will approach you with all of the hard details. I think when you work as a group, you always have a better outcome, and that would be something else that I would point out to people if they need help.
Well, in fact, Morgan, what you bring to it is the same thing like being a member of USAA does for you. You bring the power of a large community, and you can negotiate in bulk, and that's what you're doing. Rather than me saying, I've got 2 cats, I got to get back from Botswana, and someone down the road with a dog. Now the 3 of us together, and then 5, and then 10, and you can negotiate bulk rates, and that's what I think is really one of the powers of what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, there's community too, so when you get here, if you have a little bit of a struggle, we'll try to help you out, because we'll have community and connections.
Okay. And here's the other piece of this too. So again, doing it on your own, which is the norm. I mean, this hasn't been attempted before like this, but doing it on your own, we've got a couple people who have given quotes. Now, Garth McCarthy said he was quoted just 35,000 Rand for 4 dogs. Garth, I wish I'd known where you were 15 years ago. It would have saved me a fortune if you can find someone that's going to do it for 35,000 Rand. But I'm starting to wonder about the safety of your pets. I don't know who that is, but because Vickers got a quote of 65,000 for a dachshund. So 1 dachshund, twice what you're getting for 4 dogs. I'm a little bit concerned, but anyway, needless to say, you buyer beware. You got to research this. I had to do a lot of research just to get my cats over to Botswana. And I got to tell you, despite the fact that they made me sneeze a lot, they did add a good quality of life to my experience in Botswana. Had a big house for them to run around, and they enjoyed it. So I understand why people want to bring their pets. Morgan, before we wrap up, I want to say thanks for your time this morning. It's really, I think, been very informative for a lot of people, and also for what you're doing. And I'm kind of humbled. I'm kind of humbled that you found out about this from watching my video. That's awesome, because YouTube doesn't let people find my videos.
No, I have to say I've shared some of your stuff, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I feel like this issue is not very well known in the United States, and I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about it, because if we don't know people need help, we can't help them.
Gotcha. Oh, and Gareth McCarthy corrected it. It wasn't 35,000. It was a typo. It's 350,000 Rand. That sounds more like it for 4 dogs. 350,000. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, Morgan. Thanks a lot. As they say in South Africa, buy a donkey. Thank you very much. Very, very much.
All right. Well, you have a great day. I really appreciate you having me on, Chris.
It's my pleasure. We'll get you back here when this thing firms up a little bit more and we see where it's going. Okay. And then
right,
you send me those links, and I'll put them under the video, and we'll get that updated so people can find them. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a great day. I really appreciate what you're doing.
You're welcome. All right. I'll let Morgan drop off there very quickly. And so that's Morgan with Operation Pet Lyft that they're putting together to get folks. There we go. Get you. There you go. She's out. Okay. So, folks, thank you so much, Morgan. Appreciate you being with us here and answering these questions. Folks, I hope you got your questions answered. I took in as much as I could from the chat. Can't get everything in because I've got to direct the conversation here. But, please don't make a lot of assumptions here, okay? We'll get those links, so if you want to check this out. I'm not endorsing. I'm not slamming. I'm just informing. So it sounds like Morgan's put a lot of good effort into this along with a team of folks, and we'll see where it goes from here. All right? Okay, guys, you'll be redirected automatically to my news program, which will start about 60 seconds after this ends if you want to catch today's news. And I'll be right back on the channel. And then don't forget, the first ever refugee session, Cafe Clutch, is coming at 8 p.m. South Africa time. That'd be 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we got Cafe Clutch coming up. All right, guys, see you here in just a couple minutes with the news. Thank you for your patronage. Be sure to hit that like button. Only 609 likes. Come on. Come on. You all say you love pets. You love your dogs and cats, and I got 609 likes. That's just so messed up. Come on. This was awesome. Morgan shared her time. She's not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid for this. Come on. Hit the like button. That's so disappointing. That's a little bit better. I think you all got engrossed in the conversation and forgot to hit the like button. All right. We'll see you in a few minutes.